Welcome back, builders and spatial thinkers, to another explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today because, well, we're tackling one of the absolute most satisfying, high-stakes moments in any construction project. We're going to take those dry, conceptual math measurements and translate them into a perfect, physical, real-world layout. Today, we're focusing on exactly how to square your wall panels on a raised floor deck. So get ready, because we are bringing geometry right out of the textbook and directly onto the job site.
But before we even think about reaching for our tools or snapping a single line, we have to confront a pretty harsh reality. And that is, assuming your foundation is perfectly square is literally the first mistake of building. I mean, frankly, it doesn't matter who poured the concrete or who framed the subfloor. Slabs and raised floor decks, they're almost never perfectly square. They've got subtle bumps, they might be slightly out of plumb, and materials expand and contract. If you just trace the physical edge of a crooked deck, you are going to build a crooked house. Every single subsequent step, your drywall, the flooring, your roof trusses are going to fight you. The stakes are incredibly high here, and a perfect build starts right now.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. Number 1, never trust your foundation. Number 2, the magic 3-4-5 method. Number 3, setting the baseline. Number 4, scaling up, 30 and 40. And finally, number 5, finishing the grid.
All right, Section 1. Never trust your foundation. The danger of assumptions. Let's get right into it.
So picture this. You walk onto a site and you're looking at this beautifully built raised foundation. It's got those elevated stem walls wrapping around the crawl space, sturdy posts supporting heavy girders, and these beautiful floor joists sitting squarely on top. I mean, to the naked eye, it looks perfect. And hey, it's probably a really great piece of craftsmanship. But looking square and mathematically being square are two very, very different things. You have to prove it. This is absolutely crucial to understand. Squaring to the deck is amateur, and honestly it's dangerous, because it assumes the deck is completely flawless. If the deck is accidentally shaped like, say, a slight parallelogram, and you square to it, well, guess what? Your walls become a parallelogram. Squaring on the deck, which is our golden rule here, guarantees a perfect independent grid that essentially just floats right on top of whatever imperfections exist underneath it.
Which kind of leads us to a bit of a riddle, right? If we openly acknowledge that the deck itself isn't perfectly square, how in the world do we guarantee that the walls we build on top of it will be a perfect 90 degrees? We need a tool that is totally independent of the physical wood and concrete sitting right in front of us.
That brings us to Section 2, the magic 3-4-5 method. Geometry to the rescue.
To answer that riddle, we don't need fancy laser scanners or incredibly complex algorithms. No way! We use the 3-4-5 method. This is the simple, age-old principle of using the proportions of a right triangle to guarantee a perfect 90-degree corner. It works like this. If you have a triangle where one leg is a multiple of 3, the second leg is a multiple of 4, and the hypotenuse, that long diagonal side, is exactly a multiple of 5, then the angle between the 3 and the 4 is absolutely, unquestionably a perfect 90 degrees. This reliable bit of geometry is going to be the ultimate blueprint for visualizing and snapping our chalk lines, which will dictate the exact, true positions of our wall panels.
Moving right along to Section 3, setting the baseline, the first chalk line. Now let's put that theory into actual practice. I want you to spatially map this layout in your mind. Walk to the very back of the floor deck. That's the end wall furthest from where the home's main entrance will be. This long, continuous stretch at the back, that's where we're going to establish our unshakable anchor. We need to measure inward from the deck's physical edge, and the magic number here is typically 6. We measure 6 inches inward to set our anchor. Now, actually, quick caveat, the exact number could be 5.5 inches or something slightly different, depending on how much extra depth you want between the deck edge and your exterior shear wall. But for the sake of our layout today, we're going to use a solid, even 6 inches as our offset from the edge.
Let's walk step by step through snapping that very first, highly critical chalk line. Step 1, start at that top line, the furthest end wall. Step 2, grab your tape measure and mark exactly 6 inches in from the deck's raw outside edge at both far ends of that back stretch. Step 3, pull your chalk line super tight between those two marks and snap it. You now have a perfectly straight line that represents the inside edge of your back end wall. This single line is your baseline. Everything else in the entire house layout will be dictated by this one perfectly straight chalk line.
Section 4, scaling up, 30 and 40. Building the giant triangle.
Now, having one straight line is a great start, but we need a perfectly square corner, right? We need a flawless 90-degree corner to start framing walls. We do that by scaling our 3-4-5 math up to massive, real-world proportions right there on top of the floor deck. We aren't measuring 3 inches or 3 feet. We are measuring 30. Now, what's really interesting about this step is how we build it out. You're going to start at the top left corner of your newly snapped baseline. Pull your tape measure from left to right along that top chalk line, which remember is sitting precisely 6 inches in from the outside edge. You measure exactly 30 feet down that line and make a very clear mark. That right there is the first massive leg of our giant triangle.
Next up, we need the second leg. So we go back to that exact same top left starting point on our baseline, but this time we pull our tape measure straight down the left side of the raised floor deck. We pull it down a massive 40 feet. But remember our foundational rule. We have to maintain our inset. So when you make that 40-foot mark down the left edge, you absolutely must ensure it's positioned exactly 6 inches inward from the raw, physical left edge of the deck. Okay, so now you have a 30-foot mark on your top baseline and a 40-foot mark running down the left side.
So how do we lock this physical triangle in? Well, it requires snapping lines to form the perfect intersection. Step 1 is already done, marking 30 feet on the top baseline. Step 2 is done, marking 40 feet down the left edge. Now, step 3 is where the real magic happens. You chalk a line starting from your top baseline down through that left side 40-foot mark. But to guarantee it's a perfect 90-degree angle, the diagonal distance, the hypotenuse, connecting your 30-foot mark and your 40-foot mark absolutely, unequivocally must measure exactly 50 feet. When that diagonal hits 50 feet perfectly, bam! You snap your lines, you have just locked in a physically massive, mathematically flawless right angle directly on your floor deck.
Finally, Section 5, finishing the grid, locking in the layout.
Okay, so we have a perfect, verified corner at the back left of the building. Now we expand it. First, you take that beautifully squared left wall line and you extend it all the way down to the bottom of the deck, so every single wall panel knows exactly where it belongs. Next, because you know for an absolute fact that your left wall is an undeniable, mathematically perfect straight line, it basically becomes your master anchor. To find your right sidewall, you simply measure horizontally from left to right, starting from your perfect left line, rather than trusting the physical right edge of the deck. Finally, you use 2 measurement points off that squared left wall to chalk your final right sideline. You've literally transferred the perfection from the left all the way across to the right.
And look at that. Honestly, congratulations are in order here. Your wall panels are now completely, mathematically squared on the floor deck. By taking the time to create that massive triangle, you've established a flawless internal grid. It honestly doesn't matter if the concrete below is slightly shaped like a trapezoid. Your framing is going to be perfectly square, perfectly plumb, and completely ready to support everything else that goes into this build without fighting you one bit.
At the end of the day, building is all about control. It's about establishing order over raw materials. And today, you took control right back from the unpredictable, uneven elements of construction. So I'll leave you with this final thought. Next time you walk onto a job site and look at a freshly poured foundation, will you trust your eyes to tell you it's straight, or will you trust the triangle? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Until next time, keep measuring twice, keep snapping those perfectly square lines, and keep building brilliant structures.